My name is Athena. I'm a stand-up comedian, writer, and podcaster, and I live with two little people who are under the age of 2, and their vocabulary is limited. So what I do is I invite friends around who have, a few more words to have a chat with. That's it. That's the concept. It's a podcast. That's a podcast, right?
That's a
That'll
podcast.
do.
You nailed it.
Welcome to Keeping Athena company, Chris Betts. It's been forever. I can't remember the last time I looked you in the eye in 3 dimensions.
I swear it might have been even like a long time before lockdown, because like the last show I remember doing with you was, I think it might have been Sunday Service when it was still at Top Secret.
Oh wow, yeah. Oh gosh. And what happens is in comedy, because you're a stand-up and lots of other things, but that made me sound like you're a stand-up and like a mass murderer or something like,
Yeah,
lots of other things that we were talking about,
Thanks,
because that kind of stuff will get you deported. But yeah, you kind of like see some people for ages. I feel like I went through a stage of seeing you like 3 times a week, every week for like 2 years, and then we both kind of went to different corners of this comedy pond, and we didn't cross paths again, which is really weird.
Yeah, and then normally when you run into someone, it's over and over and over again for 6 months, and then you don't see them again for 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. And then you see them again, and they've got no hair, and they've done like a drastic thing, and you're like, I barely recognized you, but you look just like how I met you like years ago, which is very reassuring.
That's the pleasure of going bald young. Is you just look like this now. There's nothing you can do about it.
Well, do you know something? My other half doesn't have any hair, and I look at him and I sort of think that's quite liberating. You wake up, you shave your head, and you get on with your life. Like today's hair wash day for me, and after this call, I've got to spend 45 minutes like retwisting my hair. I don't know. Maybe this is my hair privilege talking. Like, oh, it's just so hard having hair. It's just so hard. Excuse me, let me deal with this one.
No, it takes work. I mean, my wife has curly hair, and she has to, the amount of work that she has to do when she does her hair, and the amount of time that it takes just to untangle it, wash it, and let it retangle again is insane.
It is mad. It's mad.
So,
and I've got kids now too. I've got a 2-year-old, and it's just work. I wish I could pay someone to do it. Oh, you can do that, but it's lockdown, so
that's what. Yeah, those were the days, eh?
Pay someone to do. Yeah. So how are you? Try and condense that question into I'm not just asking you how you are now, but how have you been over the past like 3 years since I last saw you? Is there a word?
For the 2 years before lockdown, loving it. I was literally living my dream. It was all I wanted. I was doing stand up on the road, and I was so happy. And then the year of lockdown has been the first 3 months were me trying to stay productive, and so I did a bunch of things, and then I hit a wall, and then I did nothing for 6 months, and now I'm back doing podcasts and online shows and things like that, and I feel productive again.
So what did you do to feel productive when it first started?
I started off doing like a daily little sketch that I would send out, and I called it Chris Betts' pro life. Oh no, life pro tips, not pro life tips. It's a very different show. It was life pro tips, and it was just stupid things like teaching people how to juggle, and then it would say like, Chris is going to teach you how to juggle, and then the thing was like, just lie. Nobody wants to see. Just tell them you juggle. They'll believe you. So it was just dumb. And then I did like 2 months of topical jokes every weekday.
Oh wow, that's hard because Trump was still president then. So all your topical jokes must have been about Trump and Brexit.
I purposely wouldn't talk about either unless it was something absolutely remarkable. So, and it was like I gave up. I sort of stopped after the George Floyd thing because it felt like a weird time to be putting stuff out. And then I was going to come back after a few weeks, and I'd lost the momentum, and I was tired. So I put it away. But it was a really good exercise. I really enjoyed doing it.
So a lot of comedians did that, like kind of, right, we've got to just make content, we've got to write, we've got to perform. Was that something you've always wanted to do and you finally found the time to do it? Or were you like, oh God, this is just, I'm going to just give it a go? Like, were you pleased that you had the chance to kind of make that kind of content?
Oh, not at all. No, I hated it. all I wanted to do was stand up.
That's how I feel about online sketches. I find my brain doesn't work that way. Yeah, I can't do it. I've tried to sit down with a pen and paper and thought, right, Athena, write something, film it, and put it up. And I'm like, my brain just shuts down. My brain breaks down at the thought. So you hated it, but you did it for months.
Yeah, because I had to do something, because I used to write every day, but then I could jump up at new material nights, or I could throw something new, like a new tag into my set on the weekend or something. because I was out like six or seven nights a week basically, and because I really love doing it, and then losing that, I was just aimless, and I had to put that energy somewhere. If nothing's going on in my life, if nothing's going on in my life, then I can write about what's going on in the world, I guess.
So I want to ask you a question. Have you ever been anything other than a stand-up?
Oh God, yeah. I didn't start doing stand up until I was 26.
Okay, what did you do before then?
And before that, I did as many weird things as I could, because I always wanted to be a stand up from when I was like a little kid, like 6 or
Oh,
7. I
okay,
wanted to
no.
do
We're
it.
going to lean into that. So, what's kind of 6-year-old says I want to be a stand-up? Because that's quite like extraordinary. Normally when it's showbiz, they want to be actor or singer, but you wanted to be a stand-up comedian.
I just loved it. I always liked being alone when I was a kid. Like, and there was something about this person. They're all alone on stage, and they're so funny. Like, in Canada, we used to get a half hour of stand up every day, like every afternoon, from the Just for Laughs festival. And so I remember the ones that I loved when I was little were like Lee Evans, John Panette, Billy Connolly. And they would just, I remember doing that dance. You know when kids have to pee, but they don't want to
Yeah,
bleed? And it was like that sort of dance on my feet, where I was like, if I keep laughing this hard, I'm going to pee myself. So I have to go to the bathroom. But I was like, but I don't want to miss the next joke. And this was, back in the day when you couldn't rewind television. And so if you missed it, you missed it. And that was a wrap. And so that was a constant battle for me. I loved them so much. And then as I got older, like I remember the first album that I like streamed on Napster was Eddie Murphy's Delirious, and my brother and I knew every word to that special, and we were like 14. I was 14, he was
yeah. I
11.
feel like Delirious and Raw are in a lot of comedians' kind of backstories. Like there's a lot of comedian origin stories that have Eddie Murphy, Delirious, and Raw in. And the funny thing, I was watching Delirious the other day with my partner because I was saying to him, it's problematic. There's problematic stuff in that, and then he was going, no, there isn't, no, there isn't. And we watched it again, and then we were like, yeah, actually, there's problematic stuff in it. It's really funny.
I'm in a strange place where I have to defend it according to the time. It's obviously terrible now, but at the time, this was a black comedian saying that he was playing tennis with his gay friend, and they went out and they were hanging out, and then afterwards he's like, I'm gonna go get a beer, you want to come? And he said, no, I'm gonna go suck some dick. He said, all right, have a good time. That is shockingly, like, for stand up in the 80s, that is shockingly progressive, that he's not just hanging out with one, but then when someone says he wants to go and have sex with somebody, he doesn't
Yeah,
shame them.
I think it's more of the language. I think I'm thinking of a bit with Mr. Actually, the Mr. T bit's quite funny, but there's a specific bit where he talks about catching AIDS, and it's like with what we know now, it's like that.
Yeah.
If I say insensitive, that is not even strong enough for the
Yeah,
word.
no,
But then
absolutely.
it was the early 80s, and nobody knew anything. Even people who were vulnerable to AIDS didn't know anything because what did anyone know, right? But it's great. I prefer
Yeah.
Raw actually, as it happens, and I feel like I'm in a minority. Everyone I speak
Oh,
to
okay.
says Raw isn't as
Very
funny,
much.
but I don't understand why they say that because jokes about having a shit. I mean, nothing is funnier to me. I love bum and shit jokes still make me laugh. Yesterday I tweeted something with the word Uranus in it, and that finished me. I was so happy. I've been dying to make a joke about Uranus like for ages on Twitter, and I was so pleased. And I love poo joke. It must be because I'm potty training my daughter, and in order to keep the spirits up, I'm just finding poo funny.
Sorry, what's the poo joke on Raw? I can't
It's
remember.
the
That's not the GI
it's
Joe
when
got
he's
stuck one,
doing
is
an
it?
impression of Richard Pryor having a shit, and and he's going. By the way, just to clarify, the baby's sleeping now, so I'm okay to swear. That's the rule. Yeah, he's
Okay.
doing the impression of Richard Pryor having a poo, and I'm not even gonna do an impression of it because it will not do it justice. And he's talking about all the different kinds of poo, like the poo where you squeeze for ages and your little one comes out, or the poo where like you do it and there's
Mm,
just not enough toilet paper to wipe what remains. Yeah, it's near the beginning. It's
mm.
it's 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 at the start where he's talking about Bill Cosby, and he's talking to Rich. He's doing an impression of talking to Richard Cosby, to
Oh, yeah.
Richard Pryor about how Bill Cosby doesn't like him, and then he does an impression of Richard Pryor's response. Anyway,
Mm.
I'm making it sound so dry and crap and not funny at all, and it's
That's a
it's
great bit.
hilarious.
That's a
It's
great
it's
bit.
it's brilliant, and it's got the intro with Samuel L. Jackson
Yeah.
in it. Do you remember there's like a little intro to it about a young
I don't
Eddie
remember
Murphy
that.
is in a living room, and everyone's like, Eddie, Eddie, tell a joke, and he tells a really awful joke, Um,
Oh yeah.
and it's just when I think what it was is I watched Raw as a child. So if you're like 11 or 12 years old or whatever, and you watch that, it's just even if you don't get the jokes, everything
Mm.
about it is hilarious.
Yeah, and his imagery and like kids were involved. Yeah, so there's something about what Eddie Murphy did where it wasn't like a lot of it was really silly imagery that he chose, like in the Goonie Goo Goo sketch, where like she just keeps falling down the stairs forever. That's so funny to everybody. And then he had a lot of kid characters in it, like the ice cream sketch, and then him and his brother in the bath. And so I think because he included so many stories from when he was younger, it really appealed to me when I was younger as well, because it was like, oh, I can actually see myself in this. It's not me trying to understand an adult world. Like this is straight up funny to me. So I think that's part of why it was so formative for so many of
Yeah,
us.
totally. And it felt naughty. It felt naughty, like
Oh yeah.
knowing it.
Oh yeah.
So what did your like family and teachers think when you were like, I want to be a stand-up when I'm older? Did they be like, were they like, yeah, whatever?
I didn't tell anyone.
Oh, brilliant. You just kept it to yourself and then you suddenly became a
Yeah.
stand-up.
Yeah. I told one girlfriend when I was 20, and until then I'd kept it a secret the whole time. And because like my parents were both like, well, my dad more so, but was really like a fiscal conservative, and was just like, you're going to go to university, you're going to get a good job, you're going to pay your taxes kind of guy. And so I was like, I will never tell my father that I want to be creative.
But you still got to
And
pay your
so
taxes, Chris. Come on, like I've got it on good authority. HMRC listens to these podcasts, so you pay your taxes. You just do it after doing creative stuff for a living, which is so.
yeah, no, my name's Joel Dommett, and I pay my taxes.
So what? So you didn't tell your parents because you thought they wouldn't approve.
I was the first of both families to go to university, so they had like a lot of uh, pressure on me doing well in school and living the life that they worked insanely hard to go through. My dad joined the Navy when he was 15, started out as a TV repairman, and then worked his way up like American Dream style to the top of his company. Not when I was a kid, like by the time I graduated high school, he was suddenly near the top of it. And then my mom was like, had to give up a full ride scholarship to university because her dad died, and she had to work to support her family because she had four other brothers and sisters. And then was like a secretary and was doing her boss's job because her boss was a lazy piece of shit. And a company found out, and so paid for her to get a university education while she was doing her work. So they just both worked insanely hard for their whole lives, never got a chance to go to university, and they saw the possibility in me, so they just pushed that real hard. And I ended up getting into a great university, and I hated it, and I dropped out to do stand up. So
And how do they feel now? Now you're well, obviously it's locked. We're locked down, and our industry's just awful. But you're doing amazing. So how do they feel that you moving to the UK and being a stand-up?
it took a while. My mom knew it was going to happen immediately. When I told her I started doing open mics while I was in university, she was like, "It's a matter of time." And then my dad wouldn't mention stand up for the first 2.5 years that I did it. He loves it now. Yeah, now he's proud of me.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. It's amazing. It's annoying when parents make you work for their like love and support. Why can't they just do it anyway? But I'll tell you something. If my kids turned to me and said, "Mummy, I want to be a stand-up," I'd be like, "That's good, but get a trade as well. Get a trade as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Like, why don't you learn plumbing as well? Whilst because open mic during the day, during the night. So do something during the day with yourself.
Mhm.
Purely because of my personal experience, which is because I was 31 when I started. I say this all the time. People must be sick of hearing about it, but I was 31 and I'd
Mhm.
been working for like I guess a decade, really, maybe even longer. And I'd done to uni and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But like I always say that it was amazing because I could subsidize my comedy career with my job. Um, and the
Yeah.
climate, I guess it's a very London centric thing because the climate in London is when you do perform comedy for a long time, you don't get paid very well, if at all. And so whilst
Mhm.
you're doing that, it is helpful to have a job. Um, that allows you to kind of live sustainably. But then, as you progress and you had that conflict between like the effort your job is taking from you and the effort stand up is taking you, which is definitely something that impacted me. So you came over to UK just to be a comedian.
Yeah. I'd already lived here twice though. I lived over once when I was 19. I had like a base of friends and a job that I could basically walk into because I moved over once. I lived in Brighton for 3 years when I was 19, because a friend got me a job at the bar that he was working at, and I hated my hometown. Um, and so I lived there for 3 years, and I got very good at cocktail bartending.
Okay.
Like I was named best cocktail bartender. I've got somewhere in my parents' house. There's a silver platter with my name engraved on it.
What's your favorite cocktail?
The Negroni.
I love a
It's just
Negroni. Oh, I love because I
good.
love bitter kind of palate cleansing taste. And Negroni is just like really refreshing. I can't stand those. I can't stand cocktails that are like smoothies, like really sugary and sweet.
Yeah, no. Those are great when you're 19 and you're out with all your friends, whatever. But if I'm sitting with my friends, if I'm hanging out with Athena and I want to have a nice night, I want something that's not going to make me have to. I don't know. I don't want something that's going to give me energy. I want something that keeps me chill. So I want like a Negroni or an old fashioned or Manhattans, mostly classics. There are very few new cocktails that I found that I really love.
Oh, okay. You're an old school. You're a traditionalist.
Yeah. Well, they're so simple. They're built around the booze, whereas like so many new cocktails, like the fruity ones, are about hiding it.
Did you find yourself becoming a mixologist?
I was technically a mixologist, though I would never have used that word.
No, what's wrong with the word mixologist? I love it. It's because I don't know anything about cocktail making, so I always like to acknowledge expertise where I don't have it. So it sounds like if you're a mixologist, you're an expert in booze, which sounds great.
But that's the problem with it, is that's what it sounds like. And so the only people that use that word in sort of the cocktail world are like the same people who in comedy like self-refer as dark comics.
edgy comics as well. Anyone that tells you is edgy is never edgy.
Yeah, so any bartender that said they're a mixologist is either like brand new and trying to sound like more important than they are, or is an asshole.
I hope you've been enjoying this episode so far. We have more of Chris after this brief message. Lively Laughs is back. Remember back in 2019, we raised the money for a Pan-African library in Ghana that centres African stories, history and academia in the heart of Accra. It provides outreach to kids who wouldn't otherwise have had access to this kind of education. It is a brilliant resource. It's a project that's close to my heart and we're going to raise some money for it. Just how can you help? Buy a ticket. It'll be on Friday the 26th of February. It'll be an hour of online comedy and we've got an amazing lineup. We've got Nabil Abdul Rashid. He tore up Britain's Got Talent last year. He got to the final 3. He was Alicia Dixon's golden buzzer and he generated 3,000 Ofcom complaints. Come see what he's got to say. We've got Ella Al-Shamahai. You know her off the BBC. She hosts documentaries. You know her off Channel 4. She hosts documentaries. You know her from TED Talks and she's a National Geographic explorer. She's going to do a micro edition of Keeping Him Company on the night. We've got Michelle de Swart. She's a brilliant comedian and an actor. You can see her in The Duchess that is currently on Netflix, but she's going to do comedy for us on the night. We've got Do the Right Scene, who I'm a part of. We've been in The Guardian, we've been in Time Out, and we do wonderful, fast-paced, high-energy improv, and we can't wait to perform for you. And we've got a brilliant stand-up called Mary O'Connell. She was in the Funny Women Awards finals last year. She's brilliant, she's hilarious, and she's given us her time too. So what are you waiting for? Tickets are on ticketsource.co.uk/lively laughs. The link is also in the description of this podcast. The link is also available in the biography section of my social media feeds, and I've been talking about it on my social media feeds a lot too. So look for Lively Laughs. It'll be brilliant. Look, it's a cause that's right up my street. If you like this podcast, it's probably up your street too. So I'll see you there. Let's get back to Chris. Did you, whilst you were a mixologist, were you still thinking about stand-up, or did you put it on hold because you were enjoying the job so much?
I was definitely thinking about stand-up, but I noticed as I got older, like through my teens and my early 20s, the stand-ups that I loved had already lived lives. So they had a bunch of crazy stories from things that they did. And so I did that. I wanted to wait until I'd seen enough of life to have something worth saying once I got.
Well, did you find yourself, as you were deliberately living then to become a comedian, did you find yourself having things happen to you and thinking to yourself, oh, that's really funny, I need to write it down?
It was more that I would chase things. I would say yes to things that I shouldn't say yes to, just because I was like, well, that sounds like life to me.
Okay, so let's talk about that. What kind of things do you say yes to that you shouldn't have, that you can share on this podcast?
Oh, just like I sold shoes on the black market in Nice for a little while with this Tunisian guy that I met at a hostel.
That's quite, you get a lot of that in Barcelona. You get a lot of guys mainly from like sub-Saharan Africa, and they walk around with these big sacks of trainers and they lay them all out, and then the police come and have to pack them all up again. Is that what you did? Is that exactly?
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what I
That's
did.
wild. That's literally, I'll tell you what, that's wild because you are a straight white man. That doesn't sound like that. Sounds like you going fuck this. I don't want to live like this. I want to strip off this privilege because that's like that's very much the job. Well, I guess you were an immigrant, obviously, but that's generally
Mm.
the kind of the realm of the economic migrant who was just like trying to get by. But you thought fuck it, it's available. How did you get into doing that? That sounds like I don't want because even if I wanted to, I don't know how to apply for that job.
There's not they don't put up Craigslist ads. It was it's not on LinkedIn. Uh, I well, I like part of the stripping away the privilege thing. One other thing that I noticed is the people that I really looked up to when I was a teenager, none of them came from privilege. None of them had easy
Yeah.
lives. And so I was like, all right, well, I guess if you want to be someone that like, because all like I always wanted to be someone that I would have admired when I was a kid. That was my goal as like a person. And so I was like, all right, well, it looks like if I take the easy road, I'll probably end up being one of these assholes. So let's just make things more difficult. So I'd show up in cities without any plans just to try and see what I could do. And I ended up homeless a couple times for a little while. And that was my fault, but I learned from it. And never for long because I was still a straight white guy who was charming. And so people gave me jobs eventually. Um, and I think that safety net helped me take a lot more risks than I would have otherwise. Um, but but yeah, so the way that I met this guy was I showed up in Nice in the off season when no one is there because I needed some work. I just tried to get work on a whim in the Alps and had to spend 4 days in a bus station because I couldn't afford to leave or go anywhere. Uh,
That sounds horrifying. That sounds like a personal nightmare for me. I can't imagine, especially whenever have you ever in comedy you must have had to burn up an evening at some point because you missed the last train. You've got to wait till the next day.
mm,
I swear to God, no, nothing is longer than having that. Those hours felt like a month when I've had to do. I've only done that maybe twice, and those hours felt like a month. And you did it for 4 days in the Alps.
yeah, it was awful. Everyone else was like on literally having the time of their lives because they were on vacation in the Alps and they were like clearly doing well financially because they're on vacation with their family in the Alps and everything. So it was like I was sitting on my sleeping bag, not asking for money or anything, and I was reading books about depressed people. I was reading a book called Heavier Than Heaven about Kurt Cobain, and and then eventually I remember I was on like a shuttle bus that was free that took me into the resort part because I was trying to find a job as like a dishwasher or something. But I came right at the end of the season because I'm an idiot and I didn't look ahead, so no one was hiring. And I remember I gave my seat to this girl, and she was like, "Oh, thank you." And then we started talking, and her and her friend said, "We saw you in the bus station a couple days ago, and you were the saddest person we've ever seen."
And I guess you would have been because you were in the bus
And
station with no money.
I I really was, and they took me in. Sort of, they were like, "Listen, like, come over to our place. We'll make you some food." Um, they didn't let me sleep over, and they were like, "I'm sure you understand why." And I was like, "I absolutely understand why." Um, but that sort of like show of humanity gave me the sort of oomph to be like, okay, I can scramble together the last few years I have and get to Nice because I'm pretty sure I can work there because spring is starting. And so that's what I did. So it was like that little boost got me out of the station.
It sounds like you've lived your life like how people they make reality. You know, there's like reality TV shows now where they just put people on a plane with no money and they say get to point X and film the journey. It feels like you just did that and
Mm.
that was your life. Like The Amazing Race. Did you watch it? I never watched it, but I heard about it, and it was like they just sent people away to travel around the world with no money, and they filmed it. It sounds like you kind of
Yeah,
you kind of
yeah,
did that yourself.
yeah, kind of. I tried to. I was very much when I was younger. I was a whoever has the most stories at the end wins
I feel like you'd write a really good memoir.
kind of guy.
You'd write this. It feels like everything that led you up to this point sounds like because my life has been like pretty pedestrian compared to yours. Like from what I'm hearing, like my memoir would be kind of shit. Just like it's a middle class crap. My memoir would just be like, oh, she found out there were different kinds of olive oils and her life was changed. The end. That's literally my life. But you just wandered around. Did you wander around the what? Did you stay in Europe? Did you travel to America or South America?
I lived in a Buddhist monastery in Thailand for a while.
See,
It was like
I could
a
never predicted that. I couldn't. Okay, let's talk about the Buddhist monastery in Thailand. To what end, first of all? What made you think, let me go to this monastery? What was the end goal?
a friend of mine who is now a human rights lawyer was working at a refugee camp in Thailand for Burmese refugees, and she sent me a message saying that while she was working, some monks who had their own sort of refugee camp up the road asked if she knew anyone that might want to do the work with them as well. And she thought of me immediately. And so she sent me a message. And so my girlfriend at the time and I packed up and we just headed out to Thailand. And we lived there. And it was, we taught English and a little bit of computer skills. And what it was the monastery had like, so Burma is, or Myanmar is a nightmare. And so what happened is the villages in sort of the Shan and Kachin district, and another one that I can't believe I'm forgetting right now, the junta went in, killed everybody except for the kids, and just sent the kids out in the woods and were like, good luck. And so what the monks would do is if the kids were technically novices, so like trainee monks, right? Then they were allowed support that the government wouldn't otherwise give them, books, shelter, things like that. So they would just take in as many kids as they could. They would get support that they wouldn't get otherwise as refugees. So they would get education and food and shelter and all these things. And the monks were remarkable because I remember talking to them while I was there, and they said, I was like, so are all these kids going to be monks? And they were like, no, 2 of these kids are going to be monks. The rest of them just needed a place to be while they grew up. And they taught them, they ran an organic farm there. The kids built mud huts on it. So they got construction skills. We taught them computer skills. We taught them basic English. And so, yeah, so I lived there for like 2-3 months or something. And taught these kids, and then they taught me some Thai, and it was amazing. I really, really loved it. We were right on the Burma border. We went in once for a day, and I found out because we went to the market. I found out later that one of the monks who was teaching me kung fu while I was there, I got kung fu lessons from a Buddhist monk. It was awesome.
Wow.
One of the monks had apparently been sort of doing rounds around us because there are a ton of pickpockets in the market. And so every time one was about to pickpocket me or my friend, which we never noticed, he would just show up like a superhero and just shake his head at these kids. And they'd be like, all right, fair enough. You're with the monks.
That sounds like they're like your entourage.
Yeah. They were our local guides keeping us safe. But yeah, I mean, being there was amazing, and it was really, really hard to leave. But the only reason I did leave was because I was going to university and I had to move to Montreal to do that. Otherwise, I would have stayed for a lot longer. The girl that I went with actually ended up staying for 2 years.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing, especially because you were in a relationship. Was you?
Well, sort of. We sort of broke up
So
before we left and stayed
okay.
friends, and then yeah, but we're still good friends. We're great
I'm not
friends. She's
surprised.
amazing. But
It's a formative experience. So have you ever kind of jumped on a plane and
mm,
gone somewhere on this quest to kind of just live life and be open to experiences and regretted it? Have you ever thought to yourself, I don't know what I'm doing here. This is awful.
no, but like there were parts of it, but never overall. I never look back and go, I shouldn't have done that one. Like
Yeah.
when I first I moved to Ireland for a while on a whim because I went out there to hang out with some guys that I'd met when I was a janitor in France, and
Was
they
this in
seemed
Nice?
cool
Sorry.
there.
When you were janitor in France, was
Oh
this
no,
what you were in Nice?
this was in Anglet, and it was which is like a small little surf town next to Biarritz in Basque country. And I was a janitor at a surf hostel on the beach, which was the best summer I've ever had. And I was 18, which is too young to peak, but what a summer.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so I met some Irish guys there, and they said they were like, "Come out to Cork, we'll have a great time." But I meant like vacation them, and then turns out like real them wasn't as cool or fun, and so I didn't hang out with them, and so I was sort of alone. I didn't have any money, and I remember at one point I had 14 euros to my name, and that wasn't enough for a night in a hostel. And for some reason, I bought a CD.
Because
Like, I
that
was
they used to
so
cost 40. What was
stupid.
the CD? What was the CD? Was it worth it?
It wasn't even a good CD. It was a band that I was taking a risk on.
Oh, you've never even heard of them.
Like I wasn't a fan of theirs. No, I'd heard one song by them. They're called the Union Underground, and they're a terrible heavy metal band.
Um, okay, brilliant. So, what after you spent your last 14 euros on a CD by a band you never met? I guess you're sleeping under the stars that night, right?
Well, I was going to, and I remember I was sitting on a bridge because I thought, where do homeless people sit? Like, where do you go? And I was like, a bridge seems logical. And so I was just hanging out, just reading again, like I was in the bus stop. And this guy came up to me, and this is that safety net of being a straight white guy that I was talking about, where a guy just came up to me and he's like, "What are you doing?" So I was 18, and I was like, and I explained what I'd done. I showed him the CD, and he was like, "Listen, you seem like an all right kid. Here's 20 euros. Go get a place to sleep tonight." And so I went into the hostel, and I stayed there that night, and then they gave me a job um, where they couldn't pay me, but they were doing renovations, and so I did demolition for them. I just swung a sledgehammer for a few days and moved rubble. And in between that, I harassed the local HMV into giving me a job. I went there 2 times a day, every day for 10 days until they finally hired me. And then I had an amazing time in Cork because I worked in a record store and I met a bunch of cool people. So like, I don't regret that. But the first couple weeks were like rough.
Which, okay, so first of all, it's amazing how well you can get treated. Obviously being a straight white guy, which I know you know. But second of all, I always talk about passport privilege. Like, if you come from a certain place, just having that passport can open your life up to experiences. So I have British passport experience privilege. Like, I can go anywhere I
Mm,
want, and I can just land,
yeah.
and I can live, and I can work, and I have that freedom. And that, obviously, Canadian passports is like, I like that, and American passports are like that. And it's just phenomenal, like what we can do, and we don't even realize. That's why Brexit was a real shame.
Mm.
Not that I want to talk about Brexit, because it's like, why would you want to eliminate any of this privilege we have to go wherever we want, whenever we like? Why would you want to even take away a percentage of that? It was a very strange thing, and that's what you've done.
I don't think they thought about that. Let's not get into Brexit too heavy, but I just want to. They hated the idea of people coming to them, but I think that the British psyche is so arrogant that they thought that everyone else would still let them in. And
Completely.
because when you look at the people that are in Spain and that are like, "Oh, what do you mean we have to leave?" It's like, you voted leave, so you have to leave. It's not just them that has to. Everyone has to leave. It's not. You're not like the cool friend that gets to stay after at the house party after they kicked everyone else out. And you drink in the kitchen until 4 a.m. Everyone's got to go. The cops showed up. Jump over the fence. Get out of here.
Britain is David Brent from The Office, like, does and has no
Yes.
idea that we have no idea everyone hates us because we're in the center of the maps, and the line goes, because everybody's time zone is relative to our time zone. We think we're cool. That's the least cool thing ever. Like, no one cares.
Hmm.
No one. No, oh, sorry, he's woken up. Like, no one cares. It's
Your
just
baby cares. Your baby does care.
the baby cares. He's like, excuse me. There's only one thing he cares about, and he's now getting it, so that's fine. Well, yes, with David Brent, we think everyone loves us. We think everyone loves our dancing. No one likes our dancing. We think everyone likes our music because of the Spice Girls. Like, it's not true, and that's the real shame about Brexit. Anyway, I'm just thinking about you wandering around the world trying to find yourself, and thinking how lovely that you took
Hmm.
those opportunities that you have. Because, and also, it's my
I,
regret is not doing that in my 20s, because I can't do it now. I really regret kind of being so rooted in
mm,
my 20s to
that
kind of work and taxes.
I was so lucky because I remember when my parents basically said, they were like, "Listen, when you graduate, you have three options. You can work, you can go to university, or you can travel. You're not doing nothing." And I was like, "Well, travel then, obviously. If those are the only three options, why would I do anything else?" And then when I decided that, um, excuse me, a lot of like people at my work, like managers at the store that I worked at, and friends of my parents, all to a person said, "I really wish that I'd done what you're about to do because I can't do it now." And that made me like sure that I was right.
So you're based in
Yeah.
the UK now. Do you see yourself as someone who's still traveling, or do you think you're settled here for good now?
Oh no, I'm gonna pull Mike Wilmot, and I'm gonna settle in Canada and then come over for a few months of the year and travel around. It's uh yeah, I don't I've been here for longer than I planned on being. I planned on coming for 5 years because I came here as like a, a work experience trip. Basically, I'd been doing stand up for 3 years in Canada, and I got to the point where it was like, I'm there's no one here that I really want to be, and so I'm not getting better because I'm not feeling competitive. And so I was like, I'll go over to the UK because the comics there are great. And so I decided I'd come here for 5 years, become a full time comedian, learn what I could, and then I wanted to move to New York. And I've been here for 8 years now. and I probably would have stayed a little longer, but now with COVID and everything, I'm ready to spend some time in Canada and gig out there, and then come over here for a few months of the year, go down to New York if I can. Because yeah, I need something different. I've never lived anywhere as long as this. And with the other 3 times that I've lived here almost 12 years.
Yeah, that's a long time to be in the UK. And also, this is a good time to leave the UK. I won't lie. Like, it's kind
Mm,
of, I see it falling apart. Not just intellectually, I'm seeing it fall
mm,
apart. Like, it's just the
yeah.
level of discourse at the moment. Public discourse is just dire. And I'm not sure why it is. I think it's because politically, progressive people don't know how to be convincing, and so they're afraid of saying the right thing, because if that makes sense. So there's not a huge
Mm,
amount out there
yeah.
that we can look at and say, oh, that's good. So there's nothing to counteract the bad, if
Yeah.
that makes sense, or there's very little to counteract the bad. And then when there is something that does counteract the bad, it's attached to kind of a very kind of specific politics, for example. So like with Jeremy Corbyn, I actually think he was quite a sensible
Mm,
guy, but in order to support him, you had to be a socialist. And if you're not a
mm,
socialist, that was a problem, right?
yeah.
So it was so that it was like, well, fine, I'll personally vote for him, even though I'm not wholly on board with this. Lots of people were like, I'm not on board with it at all. And that was a real shame. And now he's gone. There's a real vacuum of common sense and
Yeah.
decency, a real vacuum. Like, it's just a big black hole, and it's just nothing.
Yeah.
And we're gasping for someone to just kind of be on that kind of platform and just offer kind of like a voice of reason, and it's not there. You could be that guy, but you're leaving, so that's a shame.
Very kind. I'd bet more on you being it. There's it's, I think, of all the people, and I mean we're in the comedy world, and so we know a lot of like smart, interesting people. But the only ones that I would trust as leaders that I've met are like you, Alla, uh, maybe Dane, but they're all black comics.
Yeah, so we have no chance. Like, you got to put your chips on people who actually have a chance, or even like getting anywhere close to power. It's not gonna
Yeah.
happen. Sadly, we're not very good in this country on the left at kind of being cool around people who aren't white. People kind of lose their minds a little bit. They either elevate you into being things that you're not. So everyone said Chuka Umunna was Obama. He was not Obama, like,
Mm.
quite clearly.
Mm-mm.
Or what they do is they kind of patronize you, and they find your presence threatening. So, for example, all that drama that the Labour Party had when they were slagging off people like Diane Abbott and Clive Lewis, who were sensible people, and possibly because they support Jeremy Corbyn, but it's more likely that they just couldn't imagine people like them having any kind of authority. This is a very strange country to be in. It's very odd. What will you miss the most if you ever make it out of here? If they ever let us leave the country?
Um, if I can just address the left right thing, I wanted to get your thoughts on a theory that I've been working on,
Yeah, go
which
on.
is there's something about I think that the right maintains its ranks because they have a shared desire for power,
Yes.
um, but the left doesn't have a unifying story, which is so frustrating because like most of the creative people are on the left side, and so it's like the fact that no one has been able to create that origin story or that narrative of this is what we're working for, and so we're going to work together beyond our petty differences, which is like what the right is. Like when you look at the conspiracy theorists versus the fiscal conservatives but social liberals versus the old school money nepotism guys, they all want different things, but mostly what they want is a share of power, and so they all work around that. Whereas the left doesn't have that unifying, like wanting to help everyone isn't strong enough. It's not as strong as personal gain as a unifier. And I think it's crazy that we haven't been able to find that origin story, considering how creative not just like the creative people are, but when you look at our economists, they're having to battle 40 years of hard right wing trickle down economic nonsense, and find interesting new ways of combating that and shaping it away so that people who are like neocons will see the value in it. In the way that teachers are approaching things, like there's so much creativity on the left because it's about building something new and better. Um, that it's insane to me that we haven't been able to do that. But I do think that the lack of that unifying story is our problem.
I massively agree, and I'll expand on that as well by saying not only do the right have a kind of a shared story, what that does is it pushes them to enjoy power, whichever part of the right has it. So when Cameron was in power with his kind of friendly conservatism, with his big society crap, and I'm a friendly conservative, I'm really nice. The Brexiteers and the hard right people were like, this is cool. 2010, they were like, we can live with this. This is fine. They weren't having a go at him. They weren't. I mean, they were from the back benches, but they were because they really, really wanted the referendum so badly, and they didn't get it the first time around. Obviously, they got it in 2015, 2016. But they were like, we can live with this. On the left, every individual pocket only wants to see their version of left wing in power. So when it's centrists with the mic, they only want to talk about centrism. When it's kind of like the socialists with the mic, they only want to talk about socialism. When it's other people, they only want to talk about them. And it's like, well, you know what good looks like? Power. Good looks like getting elected. That's the most important thing. There is nothing more important than winning elections in a country which has the first past the post, two-party politics. There's nothing more important. So therefore, the only thing you can do, you know, when someone is holding a mic, is to listen to them and do what it takes for them to win. And then once they've won, guess what? You've got 5 years to fuck it all up. You can trash talk them the whole time. And that was what was really frustrating over the past few years, you know, with kind of the Labour project. It wasn't. I have decided that people were so angry with Jeremy Corbyn's lack of support for Remain, they couldn't imagine him leading the Labour Party and being Prime Minister. They were so bitter about what they felt was his contribution to losing the Brexit vote. They were like, well, we'll never support this man. And I could understand that initially. You know what I mean? Like he was horrible. He campaigned horribly during the during the referendum, and I can totally understand the PLP, the Parliamentary Labour Party, going, this guy cannot lead us. If he can't lead us during a referendum like this, then he can't lead us into kind of power. And I think that's what they meant when they meant he was unelectable. But they tried too hard to get rid of him. They tried twice. I don't even remember this. They tried twice to get rid of him, and then they never got on board. They never got over it, and they should have gotten over it. And it pains me. And now they've got Keir Starmer, who is there. You know, they're probably ecstatic he got elected. He's the opposite of Corbyn. But now all the people who remember how they were treated are treating Keir Starmer the same. And it's like, for me, they just need to just focus on the prize, which is power. That's the only prize that matters. And then once you get power, then you can have the conversation about the kind of way you want to wield it. But it's difficult. And also, the other thing about the right is people, when the right is exposed as being cruel and uncaring, people know the right is cruel and uncaring.
It's not a surprise anymore.
So it doesn't, it's like, who cares, right? So it doesn't really lose you points. You know, like today, there was some news that came out. Matt Hancock broke some laws when handing out some contracts. People expect people on the right to break laws and handing out contracts. So nobody's blinking. Why would you bat an eyelid at that? You'd be like, yeah, sounds like the Conservatives. So I think on the left, we're always trying to beat the Conservatives with a stick that is completely ineffective. It doesn't do them any damage. There's no point dwelling on their bad behaviour, because their bad behaviour is expected. The only thing you need to dwell on is the vision of the future and what it might look like if they weren't in power. And we've never really nailed that. Well, we haven't nailed that in a long time. It's very frustrating. And that's why it's a good time for you to go back to where you came from, Chris. I'll say that for nothing.
Yeah. I am looking forward to going back to Canada. I was there last year for 3 months and I had so much fun. And it was, I mean, we've got our share. Canada's a right-wing country for sure, but it's still like nice. It's just.
Which part of Canada are you from?
I'm from Vancouver. Well, just outside.
You're from Vancouver. Okay, why did I not know that? But you went to University of Montreal. Do you speak
fluently.
French? Oh, you speak French fluently, hence you spending all that time in France, which is another thing that I didn't know. See, this is how bad I am at chat. I'm only getting to the good stuff right at the end of this conversation.
I don't know. I think we covered some good bases.
I think we've covered some good spaces, but I didn't know, because I'm learning French. Don't ask me to speak French, but I'm on like 260 days on Duolingo non-stop.
Nice.
Which I'm very proud of. I can't speak French, but I'm really good at Duolingo. I'm great at it, actually, but I just can't speak the language. Do you feel homesick?
No, I never have, because I love being on the move so much that I've never been like, oh, I wish I was back home in the comfort thing. I sort of I crave the challenge of a new place, mostly, and I'll feel that absence more than I'll feel the comfort of home. Uh,
Oh,
yeah, which is
you're like a
yeah,
Rolling
it's
Stone.
infuriating. It's no way to live. I don't recommend it. I mean, I'm having a great time, but god damn it, it's like
You got no pension.
I got
You got
I
no pension,
I got
right?
nothing.
It's
I
like
traded off financial security for living exactly the life that I want to live, and my poor wife is on for the ride.
that sounds thrilling to me. I live with a lawyer.
Y- you're gonna
Um,
have a great time, and you'll have vacations. Like we don't get vacations. That's the
your life is a holiday. That's how it works. Your life is a holiday. That's how you don't need holidays when your life's a holiday. Chris, it's been brilliant. I'm going to wrap this up purely because if I don't, we're going to talk for like forever, and this will be a nightmare to edit. And I don't have time to edit. I've got
absolutely
kids, you know what I mean? So I've got to keep the podcast short. But what I was going to say, right? Normally, people come round to my house and I make them nice coffee and we eat plantain and we chat. Obviously, we can't do that, but you get a plantain voucher.
yes,
This is everyone gets a plantain voucher that comes to my podcast remotely, and that can be redeemed at any time. Okay, so whenever you feel like plantain, just send me a text or an email. I'll send you my address. Come round and redeem your voucher. There are no terms and conditions at all, none at all. Just
amazing,
come round with a voucher, and it's a verbal voucher. Just tell me, remind me that I told you got a voucher. I
nice.
haven't got time to make a little bit
Yeah,
voucher paper and send it to you. That'd be
I'm
really
gonna.
cute, but who can be bothered? I could
As,
write it on
as
a
it,
post-it note, I guess, but then what?
I'd lose it, and then you'd be like, ah, no voucher, no plantain. Sorry, big guy.
All right, so put that on your to-do list before you go. And I feel really sad now because you're genuinely leaving the UK? Like once you get vaccinated and they let you on planes and stuff.
Yeah, for a while. I mean, it's also like my dad's got health stuff, so I want to go and visit him because I haven't been able to see him in a year and a bit. And uh, also, like, I have an Irish passport, and my wife is Dutch, and so there's Brexit reasons, and so yeah, there's a bunch of reasons. But I'll be back a lot. I'll be back pretty regularly. We'll probably see each other more often because I'll be visiting than we did when I lived here.
Yeah, and I swear this is even though I said it's really hard to travel now. One of the things me and my half are saying when lockdowns are over, as much as we love the planet and sustainability, we're getting on planes.
Hmm.
And I've got family in Vancouver.
Oh,
I've got
nice.
my cousin and uncle in Vancouver. Yes, which is why I was quite excited to hear that you're from Vancouver. And we're just getting on planes and traveling now because we can both work remotely, as we've
Mm.
shown like through lockdown. Like, I've been doing those work remotely. He has, and it's like life is short, especially when it comes to going places and seeing people and having experiences. And my only regret about that is, like I said, is planes are horrible for the environment, like horrible.
Mm.
But humans are great, and you get to see lots of humans when you get on planes and get off them again and travel. And it's something I didn't do enough of, so I want to catch up. I want to make up for lost time.
Yeah.
Chris, my only regret is that I haven't seen you today, and I hope to see you before you leave. I hope it happens.
Yeah,
It
me
might not,
too. This was
sadly,
great.
but I hope it
It
does.
was so nice to
But
talk to you.
especially because you can make Negronis. Like you can make
Yeah.
Negronis. Of course, I'm incentivized to come find you before you leave.
Yeah, I made them during lockdown.
I bet you did. What else are you gonna do, right? Like I'd have made if I wasn't knocked up, I'd have been making them myself. Well, I wouldn't have been. I'd been buying the cans from Marks and Spencers and drinking those. What do you think about those cocktail cans?
Outrageous.
I like them.
Outrageous.
Anything you can drink on a train is fine by me. Like anything that you can discreetly drink on public transport works fine with me.
You get a pass with the cans for trains and parks, but if you're at your house, man, just buy the ingredients. It's 3 shots. You just pour it over ice. It's the easiest drink in the world to make. There's nothing you need to do.
Chris, thank you for coming to keep my company.
Thanks for having me. It's been awesome. I really enjoyed this.
That was the fantastic Chris Betts, a comedian's a real lover of the craft and a hilarious man. Genuinely one of the comedians I first met when I was starting out, who I would watch perform and I would think, oh, that's what a comedian does. Like, that's how it works. So he's fantastic. I'm so pleased he found the time to do the podcast. Check out his podcast too. It's called Chris Betts versus the Audience. It's absolutely brilliant. It's a live show, but now he's doing it as a podcast as well. You should definitely look for Chris Betts and look for Chris Betts versus the Audience. It is a delight. Guys, that was the end of this episode. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget, if you are listening to this podcast as it is released, there's a great show on Friday the 26th of February you can jump in on. It's online. It's an hour of your evening. It's a wonderful cause. It's affordable, I think, and it will be hilarious. So Library Laughs, check it out. If you've enjoyed this podcast, you can like it, you can comment on it, you can share it, do what you normally do with podcasts that you like. My name's Athena. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram and places like that. And thank you for listening. We'll catch up next time.